Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. This video is going to be a little bit more different because this video is by myself. So Jane and Emma are not here, but you get to see me. So in this video, like I promised, I was going to talk about my labor and delivery experience, kind of like go through everything and how like breastfeeding is going. So I'm gonna cut straight to the chase because I don't want this video to be 30 minutes long, but I'm just gonna jump right into it. Friday night around 4 a.m. I just felt like I had to use the bathroom, so I was like, oh, I need to pee. So, you know, regular 9-month needs to use the bathroom. So I'm getting up, and when I get up, I feel like this, like I see water just like running down my legs, and I was like, did I really just pee on myself? So then I was like, let me just grab something real quick and try to like dry it off. So when I bent over to pick it up and I came back to straighten myself back up, I just felt like a gush of water was coming out. It was like whoosh, and then I saw it all splash on the water on the floor, and that's when I was determined. I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely my water just breaking. So I wake up Jean and I'm like, hey, like my water broke. So we call the doctor and she tells us to go to the hospital. So when we get to the hospital, at this point it's already like, I want to say 5:30. That's when we got there. We went to the triage area where they check me, and at that point I was 4 centimeters dilated. So I was having contractions like every 7 to 10 minutes, and they would last about like maybe a minute, if not a little less, but they weren't as bad. Like it'll be like period cramps, but like a level 3 period cramps, like you can go through them. By the time I got to the hospital, when I was 4 centimeters, the contractions started getting like way more stronger, and that's when I was like, oh. So the pain was getting stronger, and I was getting them like every 5 minutes or so. And then while I was there, they asked me right away if I wanted to get an epidural. So with epidural, there's a lot of people that have told me to get it, and there's a lot of people that told me, you know, if you can do it without the epidural, try, because, you know, no meds. But at that point, like, my body was telling me that the contractions were getting worse, and I was only 4 centimeters. Like, I still had 6 centimeters to go. So I was like, I'm gonna take the epidural. So as soon as they asked me, I told her yes. And another thing that I remember is people told me, if you want to get an epidural, say it like as soon as possible, because if you don't and then later on, you know, you change your mind and you end up wanting to get it, then you have to wait for all these people who have said yes before you. And then that's not to count like the emergencies that go on, so people who need epidurals. So I was like, you know what, yes, I want the epidural. So they already notated that. And then from there, I stayed in that little triage room until they moved me over to labor and delivery. And that was, I want to say, maybe like in the next hour or so. So they took us down there. You know, with COVID and everything, I thought that I was only going to have one person. So I had 2 people in the room. If you guys haven't checked out our actual labor video, my 2 people were Jean, my husband, and his mom. So when we get to the room, at that point, you know, I'm still having contractions like every 5 minutes. And then it's really nice because I actually had like my own nurse. So on that floor, every woman who's pregnant gets their own nurse to themselves. So I had her, and then I had another nurse as well. And they were super like helpful, and you know, they walked me through all the process. And then they asked me again, you know, oh, do you want epidural? I was like, yeah. I said yes. So then they told me, all right, now the person who's gonna give you your epidural should be coming within 30 to 40 minutes. So at this point, I'm already having contractions, I want to say like every 4 minutes or so, and they were getting longer. So instead of like a minute, I think they were probably like a minute and a half. And they were getting really, really painful. So then they told me, you know, you're gonna get your epidural within 40 minutes because there's a woman who's getting a C-section, and they're giving her the epidural right now. So I was like, oh my god, like in my head I was like, how am I gonna go through 40 minutes of contractions like every 5 minutes that are so long? But to be honest, like I saw a lot of videos of women, and like I have friends who had babies and told me like when you're in labor, honestly all you can do when you have a contraction is just breathe. So I was just breathing in for 4 seconds, and then I was breathing out for 7. And then another thing that I was told to just don't yell, like don't open your mouth. So I was just breathing, like concentrating on breathing. Because to be honest, like if I'm yelling, it's not really gonna change anything. I still have to go through the pain. Sorry. So why are you interrupting my video? You're still gonna go through the pain. So I was just trying to be as quiet as possible, just concentrating on my breathing until I know that those 40 minutes were gonna come. So then the person who came, he gave me the epidural. You know, at that point only one person could stay in the room, so Gene stayed with me. And he was just, you know, the guy was walking me through the whole process. I was just scared because I've heard it's a really big needle. So I was like, is it gonna hurt? Like I literally asked him, I was like, is it gonna hurt? And he was like, no, like I'm gonna put numbing medication. You just need to be still, you can't move. I was like, all right, we can do this. So they put you in this weird position where you're kind of like bending over. Mind you, you have a huge belly in front of you and you just cannot move. But when I tell you that the epidural did not hurt, like, I literally asked him when he was done, because he was like, oh, that's it, I'm all done. And I was like, wait, what? You finished? And he was like, yeah. So that didn't hurt at all. And then after that, they give you like this, because something's like in your back from the epidural, because I know the needle doesn't stay there, but something stays there. And then they give you like this little button that you can click. So he told me automatically you're getting medication from the epidural into your body, and then this little button, if you still feel a contraction, you can just click it and it's just going to give you like an extra dosage of the medication so that you don't feel anything. So immediately after I got the epidural, I want to say maybe like 5 to 7 minutes later, I started feeling numb, like from my waist down. And he was like, oh, do you feel anything? And I was like, yeah, I'm starting to feel numb. He's like, great. That means that it's doing what it's supposed to do. So I've heard people say that they get the epidural and it doesn't, you know, they don't feel anything, like it doesn't do anything to them, or like it only sleeps one side of your body, not the other. So for me, I was lucky, and, you know, it numbed everything from the waist down. And then another thing that I listened to from one of my friends is to not really keep pushing that button so much, because the epidural, yes, like it numbs you from all the pain, but then at the same time it slowers the process of how much you dilate, because you don't feel anything. So I told myself I wasn't gonna click that button as much. I think I probably clicked it maybe 3 times at most. And then something that I was doing on my own, that one of my friends, she did say that she did this during during her labor experience with epidural. So I was like, you know what, let me try it. So she said, kind of just like push, like just push throughout your labor, because again, you're numb, so you don't feel anything, but you know when you know when you can push. So I'm just like pushing throughout it so I can dilate a lot faster. And then I was in labor I was in that room maybe around 6, 7. And then around 12:30, the doctor came. She introduced herself. She said she was going to check how much dilated I had been from the 4 centimeters in the morning. So when she checked at 12:30, I was already, I think it was like 12:30 or 1. I was already 6.5 centimeters dilated. So 2.5 more centimeters. And again, I was just doing the same thing. I was just kind of like pushing a little bit, like pushing little by little. And then I was trying not to click the epidural as much. And then this time was all really easy. Like I was relaxing. I took a nap. Like the epidural is holy grail. You know, if it works for you, go for it, because it worked for me and it was a great experience. And then after that, the doctor said, I will come back in like 3 hours or so and check how much dilated you are. And I was like, okay. So she came back and it was around 3 something, and she said, all right, let's check. And I was 9 centimeters. No, I'm lying. I was 9.5 centimeters dilated. And that's when I was like, oh my god, like it's almost happening. And you start getting like the jitters and all that stuff. And before I forget this thought, one thing that I do have to say, when I saw my water break, I did, like, my heart started racing, and I got like really nervous because I was like, oh my god, like this is really happening. Like I've been scared of labor my whole 9 months. Like how am I gonna do this? But then it was like this weird thing where I just like took a deep breath and I was like, I'm gonna do this. Like it's fine. This is what's meant to be. My body's gonna naturally do what it's supposed to do. So I was trying to be calm throughout my whole labor. Then she comes back at 3 something. She tells me, you're now 9.5 centimeters. I did not get Pitocin or none of those medications that they need to give you so it can induce your labor. Like my labor was all natural. The only thing I got was epidural. And then at that point she said, I'm gonna come back in an hour. If you're still 9.5 and you haven't dilated anymore, then she does have to put, I believe it was Pitocin, or I could be mistaken, but some medication that can fast forward the process to get to 10 centimeters. So at that point it was just wait another hour, and when she came back I was still doing like the pushing by myself type of thing. And then when she came back, I want to say it was like almost 5. She checked and I was 10 centimeters. So I didn't have to get any medication. I didn't get any antibiotics either. And then she just told me like, oh, so you know, we're gonna practice pushing. And I was like, okay. And she just tells you like, you know, just push like if you're constipated and you have to use the bathroom. And I was like, all right. So I just started pushing and she was like, oh my god, you're doing great. Like, you know, this is exactly how you're supposed to push. And then they walk you through everything. I honestly thought, when I thought about labor, that you need to push straight. Like, you don't take any breaks. And I was like, if that's the case, like, how am I supposed to do this? But that is not the case. Like, they will tell you, they'll count up to 10, and then you take a break. When you get a contraction, then you start pushing. And that's kind of how it goes. So once she did that, we started practice pushing, and I thought we were just gonna practice push, and out of nowhere it just became like actual labor. I mean actual delivering the baby. So we were just like counting every time I got a contraction, pushing, and I was just breathing. And I can, you know, I was drinking water in my breaks, like to have more. And another thing that I didn't do was I didn't scream during pushing. I just kind of focused on like push as hard as you can, because the more you push, the faster the baby comes out. And even though I did get an epidural and it does numb you from all the pain, it does not numb you from the pressure that you feel when you're pushing that baby out. So yes, I felt so much pressure, but when you feel that pressure, that's like when you need to push the most with more force. So that's what I was doing. And then I started pushing at 5, and the baby was born at 5:36. So I pushed for about half an hour. One thing that I must say is there's a lot of things that I thought going into labor that it was gonna be like a lot worse, and it was just not the case for me. But everybody's different and everybody goes through their own journey. Mine, I was just fortunate and blessed that it was a good delivery and safe. And you know, everyone in the hospital, like the nurses, everybody was great. So I must say that my labor experience was a great one. Like, I wouldn't be afraid to have more kids, because my main concern was like, damn, if I have like a really bad labor experience for my first kid, it's gonna be so traumatic when I have like other kids. But that was not the case. Like, I feel good, this is great, you know. I was in labor, because I know they say like pre-labor is until you hit 6 centimeters. So around 12-ish, that's when I was 6.5 centimeters. So from 6 centimeters until 10, that's considered actual labor. So I was in actual labor for about 5 hours. And then from 5 in the morning until 12, I was pre-labor. And then from there, you know, we stayed in the hospital for 2 days, and then we came home. If you have any questions about my labor experience, if there's anything that you would like to know that I didn't address in this part of the video, feel free to let me know. One other thing that I forgot, I did not tear in my delivery process. So I know that that's something that's also like when you're trying to recover, it's just a lot too. So I actually got 1 stitch, and it was not too bad. Like, the only reason why she put it, the doctor, she told me, was because she didn't want me to continuously keep bleeding. So she was like, you know what, I'll just put in one stitch in there. But I did not tear, thank God. Now this is for part 2. So I did mention that I was gonna also talk a little bit about like breastfeeding and stuff like that. So breastfeeding is definitely a roller coaster. It's not easy. It's not like what I thought it was gonna be. So I thought labor was gonna be a lot worse, and it's actually not as I thought. And then I thought breastfeeding was gonna be a lot easier, and it's not what I thought either. So with breastfeeding, when I first gave birth, like they you know, you carry the baby on your chest, and like they try to put you so that the baby can latch, and it's just like a whole bunch of things going on that like you don't even kind of know what's happening. You just like delivered a whole baby. So throughout the days, like the next day and the day after that, I try to like have her latch, and she will latch, but she would just not stay there for a long time. Like it would just be like 3 or 4 times that she will actually like take milk, and then she would just fall asleep. And then I also didn't know how painful it was gonna be. Like it's extremely painful, and I was just like, what is this? Like nobody told me that this was gonna be this bad. So at that point, like that was something that was concerning me in the hospital, because I'm like, you know, I always knew that I wanted to breastfeed, but I didn't know like how I was gonna do it, or like how I was gonna make it work for me. So I had a lactation consultant come to the room, and she, you know, she told me like a couple of tricks of how I can get her to latch. And then they give you like a whole bunch of paperwork that you can go through it and just kind of use that as a guide. So one thing that I did try to like keep her latching, but in the first couple of days, your milk doesn't come out, you know, fully the way it's supposed to. So since I was about 3 months pregnant, I was like leaking. I believe what it's called is colostrum. I could be saying it wrong, but I thought my milk was gonna come right away, like as soon as I gave birth, and that was not the case. So my milk started coming like normally, I want to say my 5th or 6th day after giving birth. And throughout all this time, all these days, like I was trying to get her to latch, but every time that she would latch, it would hurt like extremely bad. And then one day I tried to pump, and I was like about to cry, and I was like, yeah, this is not what I thought it was gonna be at all. Like this is crazy. So once my milk started coming down, I just started pumping like as much as I could, and eventually like the flow of my milk started coming. So now what I do is I pump every 3 to 4 hours or so throughout the day, and then that's like the milk that I'll give her during the day. And then at nighttime, like I'll give her formula, and then I'll pump like once in the night, because obviously I'm also sleeping. So I pump as much as I can throughout the day, and then at nighttime she'll have formula. So one thing that I do wanted to address in this breastfeeding video is there's a breastfeeding story for every person, and every person is different. And there's babies who latch super quickly, there's babies who don't, there's women who produce milk, there's women who don't produce anything. So I did tell myself like I wanted to breastfeed like with her latching, but it was just something that caught me off guard, and it was way more painful than I thought it was gonna be. So to me, what I have found that works the best is just pumping, having her milk. She's still drinking breast milk way more than she's drinking formula, but this is just what works for me. And I know, like, you know, there's people who say like, oh my god, like that connection that you have with your baby, it's like indescribable, because you know she's latching off of you. But I tried it, and it just didn't work out for me, and that's okay, because it's gonna be different for everyone. There's days where like I'm like, you know what, like today let's try it, and like let's latch, and it just, if she doesn't want to latch, like that's what it is. But I feel good that even though I'm not, you know, having her on my breast every time I give her breast milk, I'm still giving her breast milk, and I'm still like, I still have my supply where I can give her as much milk as I can. But I did learn, like, in the beginning, I'm not gonna lie, I did feel like a little guilty because I was like, damn, like, I really just cannot give my baby like milk. Like, why? Like, why is this not working? Like, why is this not flowing easily? And then I realized, you know what, like, there's so much for me to be grateful for. Like, the fact that I can actually like pump breast milk at all is a blessing in itself. So the fact that I'm able to give my baby as much as I can is like awesome. And then I realized that, you know what, like, I still feel good about myself even if I'm breast pumping. Like, that's, and this is, I probably said this already 3 times in the video, but that has been what works for me. And you know, if you're pregnant or you're like going through this same journey, or you're breastfeeding and you just, you know, like, you don't know what to think, my biggest advice is just to do what works for you and your baby, because you're the one who's breastfeeding the baby. So there you go. And then one thing I must say, throughout my labor and delivery and throughout this whole breastfeeding journey, like, I have to say a huge shout out and a huge thank you to my husband, because he has been such a great support system. And if you're going through this by yourself, like, I don't know, like, I salute you, because it's hard, like, it's not easy. But the fact that I have him, and there's, you know, I still feel like I can still be myself, and I can still, there's women who I know that give birth that they don't even shower, like, until it's the end of the day, because there's so much going on with the baby and everything. But the fact that I have him as a support system and he helps me through all of this is just so, like, I'm so grateful. I love you, honey. If you're watching this, you probably are. But just thank you for always being here and for always supporting me and being my little hand, right? So yeah, guys, this is what it's looking like. Like, this is my life now. I'm a whole mom. But yeah. So also in this breastfeeding part, just kind of let me know if there's anything that you wanted me to answer. I use 2 breast pumps. I have Modelo, which you can get through your insurance. And then I have another one that Jean got me that is portable. You can just insert it inside your bra and you can do whatever you want while you're breast pumping. Let me know if you guys want me to do more of these like talk throughs by myself, because I know there's girls that follow us. So if you guys have questions, shoot me a message or leave in the comments, and I will be sure to let you guys know. So overall, I give my labor and delivery experience out of 10. I'll give it a 9.5. Like, honestly, it really was not that bad. And then with breastfeeding, I probably give it like a 7 out of 10, because it is hard. It's not easy. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for watching this video without my little family. And how we always say, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share.